Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Monday, April 20th, 2015. Want to welcome you to the DFS Minute here. I'm your host, Michael Rathburn, aka Rath. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyWrath. And going to have a brief DFS Minute today. And actually, you can pretty much call it the Patriots Day Minute because that's kind of what I'm going to talk about, just the meaning of Patriots Day, what it means as a Red Sox fan, as somebody that grew up in Massachusetts for pretty much 25 years. And with everything that happened 2 years ago with the marathon and the bombings, just, it's really kind of a heavy-hearted day. I know last year was tough. This year it just can't help but bring back memories of what happened. And just everybody, hopefully we can celebrate today. It can be a great day, and we can hopefully have a Red Sox win. But kind of, leading up to it, is all I can tell you is that Patriots Day is a special day because as a Red Sox fan, you get that 11 a.m. game. Most of the time you were off from school or you were skipping class if you were in college, for sure, to watch the 11 a.m. game or to go into the city to go to the game or to be a part of the marathon. So that was always a huge deal growing up. And the last game that I went to on Patriots Day was 1998, and I dug up the box score because I remember the game. I remember how it played out, and I just remember Mo Vaughn getting a game-winning hit in the 11th inning, and it was a 4-hour game, and it was brutally cold that day. It was raining. It was 40 degrees. It was windy. We wanted to go home, but it was like, no, we got to stay. We got to stay. We got to see how this game ends up, and it ended up being a great win. And I actually looked at some of the rosters. It was Indians, Red Sox. And I looked at some of the rosters, and the Red Sox had a great team that year. They went 92 and 70, but they were really built on a handful of guys that had really great years. It was Nomar's second year, or Nomar, I should say. Mo Vaughn was in his prime. Pedro was just starting to get to that elite level. I'd been at that elite level, and they had Tom Gordon. And John Valentin was another guy that they had on the team. But other than that, if you look at the names on the team, on the roster that year, the Red Sox team didn't have a lot of household names outside of that core group of guys. I'm looking at guys like Darren Bragg, Scott Hatteberg, Troy O'Leary, Reggie Jefferson, Mike Benjamin, Midre Cummings, just all these guys that had come to the Red Sox and just – and some of those guys had put up pretty good years that year. If you look at, wins against replacement, a lot of those guys were actually in the 1s and 2s. And maybe it was some of their best years. The starting pitcher that day for the Red Sox was Butch Henry, which is crazy to think that he was the starting pitcher. And I remember the bullpen guy that gave up the hit to Mo Vaughn was Eric Plunk. And Eric Plunk was this big, doofy bullpen guy that wore these big glasses, and he wasn't very good, but he had a good run with the Oakland A's at one point. And but on the other side, you look at the Cleveland Indians, and I didn't even look at the pitching staff really. I just looked at the hitters. Bartolo Colon went that day, who's still pitching in the major leagues, which is crazy. And he was just a little bit fat then. He wasn't big fat Bartolo, but the Indians lineup was completely stacked. I mean, you had Kenny Lofton, Jim Thome, a young Manny Ramirez, David Justice, Omar Vizquel, Travis Fryman, Sandy Alomar, and Brian Giles. An absolutely stacked team. And that was a team that ended up beating the Red Sox in the playoffs that year. And it's a team that should have won a World Series, realistically. But it's really great to go back and look at that. I was 24 years old at the time. I was in the process of graduating from college and moving on to Florida. And it was just a great time to be a Red Sox fan. And it was a great time to be a part of baseball at that time, and just have, it was a great day and a great game. So moving forward to this year, obviously we have today's game, which isn't even really impactful for DFS because all the games are going to go off later. But it gives you a shot to enjoy a day game uninterrupted starting at 11 a.m. Eastern. So, again, I can just remember, we talked about the bombings 2 years ago, the impact that it had on everybody, the Be Strong movement, Boston Strong, and just it brought the city together. And I can always remember Big Papi going out there and saying, "This is our effing city." So definitely heavy heart today with Patriots Day as a Red Sox fan, as somebody that grew up there. Just thinking back on what happened 2 years ago. And so looking ahead to DFS today, the pitching landscape, unfortunately, is not very good again. So what do we do in days like this? We pay up where we can or where we think we can, and then we load up on hitters. And really what I'm looking at today, Jake Arrieta, even though he's not favored, he is a slight underdog on the road in Pittsburgh going against A.J. Burnett. So I think you can roll with Arrieta. The only thing you have a concern about with Arrieta is getting the win on FanDuel, which is 4 points. And the reason why that's so impactful is, for argument's sake, let's say your winning score to cash in heads-ups and 50-50s on FanDuel needs to be between 30 and 35 points. Well, 4 points, if you get 4 points, that could be about 10 to 12% of your total score for the day. 40 points is pretty good, so it's about 10%. But it could be anywhere from 12 to 13 to 14% of your total score for the day. So you got to get the pitcher win on FanDuel. It's extremely important. So I think you want to look at guys like Matt Shoemaker. It would be a guy you can look at. Edison Volquez. I mean, it cringes me to say that we have to look at guys like Edison Volquez, but coming out of the gates here, Kansas City is winning games, and he is a pretty heavy favorite today. So as much as I hate doing it, just close your eyes and look at Edison Volquez today. Matt Shoemaker would be an option. And then I think Iwakuma is a pretty heavy favorite today as well. I know he hasn't pitched well the first 2 outings, but he does get the game at home. Hopefully he can get it straight. So again, on a pitching day where the options are extremely thin on a site like FanDuel, Arrieta is probably going to be my number 1 guy. But I think if I'm really focused on the win, I'm looking at Shoemaker, I'm looking at Volquez, and I'm probably looking at Iwakuma as potential options. We do get a game at Coors, so you're definitely going to want to look at some of the bats in that game. Jorge De La Rosa is going for the Rockies, who's a lefty, so those right-handed power bats in the Padres lineup could go off today and could have a really big day. There's a lot of options there. You got Kemp, you got Upton, you got Middlebrooks, you got Will Myers. So there's all sorts of guys in that lineup that I think you can get in. You definitely want to have some shares of guys of that today. So anyway, guys, hey, enjoy today's game. Enjoy the Patriots Day game, especially if you're a Red Sox fan. And if you're not, well, too bad. As we always say here at Roto Curve, stay classy, DFS.